I remember the night after our wedding, not for the celebration, but for the silence. We arrived at the hotel, carrying the day's exhaustion and the party's euphoria still humming in our blood. I reached for her, seeking what any newlywed expects: intimacy, connection, the true beginning of our life together. But what I received was a simple, "I'm exhausted. Let's talk tomorrow." I didn't argue. I took it as a natural end to a long day. It was only the first night. I had no way of knowing it was the start of a glacial routine. The following days were a carbon copy. I would draw near and she would pull away. At first, the excuses were soft: a headache, a full stomach, not feeling comfortable in the new place. Then, her phone began to fill the space between us. She would lie in bed, her face illuminated by the screen, laughing at messages she never shared with me, while I lay in the darkness, acutely aware that something was wrong. I tried to be patient. I told myself it was just an adjustment period, that maybe she was nervous. I wanted to believe it was a hurdle, not a wall. But with every night, with every rejection, the bed became a field of ice. There were no caresses, no closeness, barely even an accidental brush of skin. I was sleeping next to a stranger who, just a month before, had sworn to love me in front of everyone we knew. I started noticing small gestures that hadn't existed before. She would sidestep me if I tried to hug her in the kitchen. She'd pull her hand away if I grazed it in the living room. Physical contact had vanished completely, as if she had armored herself against me. Sometimes she would feign sleep to avoid any attempt at closeness, and in the midst of her performance, I would lie there, staring at the ceiling, swallowing my frustration. There were nights I'd get up just to go to the bathroom, to look at myself in the mirror and wonder what I had done wrong. The doubt was worse than the rejection. Had I lost my appeal overnight, or had the entire relationship been a lie from the start? That idea began to fester in my mind, a poison seeping into every thought. The possibility that everything before the wedding was a mask, and I was only now seeing her true face. I reached a point where I stopped trying, not out of resignation, but out of dignity. I no longer wanted to hear cheap excuses. The silence became our custom, and the worst part was, she seemed to enjoy the distance, acting as if I didn't exist. She would turn on the television, roll over, and lose herself in her own world. I would sleep with my back to the woman who was supposed to be my wife, a contained rage burning inside me. One night, I decided to confront her. No more evasions. I asked her directly what was happening, why she was treating me like an intruder. Her answer was a knife. "It's my body, my choice. You have no right to demand anything from me." She didn't say it with pain or shyness. She spat the words with contempt, as if I were a beggar asking for charity. That moment, I understood. This wasn't about fatigue, it was about power. I was silent for a few seconds, choking back my anger. I told her it wasn't a matter of rights, but of respect, of honoring the vows we had made. She laughed, a dry, brittle sound, as if I were naive for expecting love in a marriage. "You married me," she added, "not my body." That sentence echoed in my head for days. It was a confession. There had never been any intention of truly giving herself to me. I didn't sleep that night. I opened my laptop and began to go through every document, every conversation, every detail that could prove what I already suspected. I had married a woman who never loved me. I found conversations saved to the cloud, messages with her friends, where she spoke of me as a financial safety net, where she bragged about keeping me at bay until she had total control of my accounts. In that moment, I stopped feeling confused and started feeling used. The next morning, when she came down for breakfast, as if nothing had happened, my decision was made. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to keep pretending this was a normal marriage. What we had was fraud, a contract disguised as love. And like all fraud, it had only one place to be settled: in a court of law. On the day of the hearing, I woke with a knot in my stomach, but it wasn't fear, it was determination. I put on the same suit I wore at our wedding, a stark reminder of what I had promised and what she had betrayed. When I arrived at the courthouse, I saw her walking in with a confident stride, her lawyer at her side, and an arrogant smile on her face. It was the same smile she'd given me when she told me her body wasn't mine. Only now, she was using it to sell her role as the victim. She spoke first. She accused me of being controlling, unstable, even aggressive. She painted a picture of an obsessive husband who couldn't take no for an answer. She looked at the judge with teary eyes, as if she were truly in danger with me. Her words were measured, rehearsed, designed to destroy my image and sanitize hers. I didn't interrupt. I didn't raise my voice. I waited for my turn. When it came, I opened the folder I was carrying and let the evidence speak for itself. Printed messages, screenshots, emails. There it was, the naked truth. Conversations with her friends, admitting she had only married me for financial security, that she never planned on being intimate, that it was all part of a plan to keep me at a distance while she gained access to my accounts and my name. The judge took the papers and began to read them aloud. Each sentence was a bomb dropping in the silent courtroom. I don't love him, but at least I've secured the lifestyle I wanted. I'll keep him at arm's length until he gives in with the money. Zero intimacy. I'm not giving him that. The room fell silent, broken only by the echo of her own words. For the first time since she'd walked in, she lowered her gaze. Her lawyer tried to object, claiming they were private jokes between friends, not to be taken seriously. The judge wasn't buying it. His tone hardened. I don't see jokes here. I see bad faith. I see conscious manipulation. His words reverberated through the hall like a premature sentence. She tried to defend herself, but she contradicted every statement. First, they were exaggerations. Then, she was under pressure. Then, she didn't remember writing any of it. The judge cut her off with a wave of his hand. Your memory is not on trial here. Your conduct is. And this evidence speaks for you far better than you do. The confidence she had entered with evaporated in minutes. The haughty smiles and strategic tears were gone. In their place was a woman caught in her own trap. The audience, made up of family and friends, began to look at her differently. Murmurs filled the air. Shame, disbelief, rejection. I simply watched. I took no pleasure in her fall, but I felt no pity either. It was the logical consequence of her own choices. She had gambled with my life, with my dignity, and now justice was laying the cards on the table. When the session ended, the judge scheduled another hearing for additional documents, but he made it clear the outlook was not favorable for her. Bad faith in a marriage has legal and financial consequences, he said, his voice dry. I knew it. And in that moment, she understood it too. I saw her tremble as she heard his words. As she left the courtroom, she passed by me without a glance. She didn't have to. Her silence was more revealing than any insult. That day, I understood that what had begun as a cold marriage was going to end as a fiery trial, and I was ready to expose every one of her lies until she drowned in her own theater. The second day of the hearing was even worse for her. The judge ordered the complete messages to be projected on a screen, not just fragments. The courtroom darkened as the sentences appeared one after another, leaving no room for doubt. There was her explicit contempt. If I hold out a little longer, I'll have him eating out of my hand. No way I'm sleeping with him. That's giving him power. I chose him because he's stable, not because I love him. Each word seemed to steal the oxygen from her lungs. She tried to maintain her composure, but her face betrayed her. First, she clenched her jaw. Then, her mouth twisted into a nervous grimace. Finally, she bowed her head, unable to meet the gaze of anyone in the room. The people who had been her confidants in the audience now stared at her with repulsion, as if they were only now understanding who she truly was. Her lawyer argued that the content shouldn't be taken as conclusive proof, calling it dark humor. The judge, relentless, replied, "I see no humor here. I see calculation. A person who laughs about using money and their own body as tools of manipulation deserves no leniency." That blow left her defenseless. She shed a tear, but no one seemed moved. I asked to speak, and I was clear. This was never about sex. It was about respect. She denied me all physical contact because she never saw me as a partner. She only saw me as a walking wallet. The silence that followed was heavy, as if every person in the room was digesting the rawness of my words. It was the first time I had spoken with a firm tone since this all began, and my voice didn't waver. The judge nodded and ordered my evidence to be included in the record. In that instant, I felt the scales of justice tip. There was no going back. She was exposed. Her own phrases had become her moral conviction, dragging down any improvised defense. What she had tried to portray as a failed marriage was now, undeniably, a calculated fraud. The murmurs in the courtroom grew. I remember seeing her cousin cover her mouth in horror. Her mother avoided her gaze, clutching her purse with white knuckles. Her father closed his eyes and lowered his head in shame. It was as if everyone had been slapped in public. No one wanted to be associated with her. She tried one last desperate move. She stood up and shouted that I was exaggerating, that I had manipulated the messages. The judge struck the gavel. "Silence," he ordered. He then looked to the technicians, who confirmed the authenticity of every file. "There is no manipulation. The records are intact," they declared. It was the final strike. I watched her collapse into her chair, her breathing shallow, as if the floor had been ripped out from under her. Her shoulders shook, not with sincere sobs, but with the rage of having lost control. Her eyes found mine, filled with hatred, and I held her gaze without flinching. That single look summarized everything. She had played a game, and I had refused to follow her script. The judge closed the session, stating, "We are not here to discuss love. We are here to discuss fraud." That sentence was seared into my mind like a brand. There was no room for reconciliation or misunderstanding. The woman who married me never wanted a marriage, only a contract in disguise. And now, that disguise lay in tatters. When we left the courtroom, reporters were waiting. The cameras focused on her, but no longer as the grieving wife seeking justice. They saw her for what she was, an emotional con artist who had been exposed. Her shattered expression became the next day's headline, and I understood that her downfall would not only be legal, but social. At the third hearing, I brought what I knew would be the final blow. During the wedding preparations, she had insisted on including certain clauses in a prenuptial agreement. At the time, I saw it as a formality, a guarantee that didn't affect me because I never planned on betraying her. I signed it without giving it much thought. But in the dead of night, reviewing every document with new eyes, I found the hidden gem. A clause stating that if fraud or bad faith were proven, she would lose all rights to shared assets and any gifts received during the marriage. When my lawyer presented it in court, the color drained from her face as if her blood had turned to ice. Until that moment, she seemed to be clinging to the idea that even if she lost the moral battle, she could still walk away with money or property as compensation. But the clause was clear, brutal, and legally binding. She would get nothing. Not the house, not the wedding gifts, not access to my accounts. Nothing but her tarnished name. The judge read the document calmly, underlining the key words: fraud, deceit, forfeiture of rights. He looked up at her and spoke directly. You signed this yourself, and the evidence clearly demonstrates there was bad faith from the very beginning. Her hands clenched on the table. For a moment, I thought she might faint. Her lawyer tried to argue that the clause was abusive, that no one could have foreseen these circumstances. The judge cut her off without mercy. What is abusive is entering a marriage with no intention of fulfilling the most basic duties of a shared life. There is no surprise here. There is only calculation. The entire room heard the final verdict in that one sentence. She burst into tears, but they were no longer theatrical. This was the raw desperation of someone watching an infallible plan crumble to dust. She muttered under her breath that I had tricked her, that I had manipulated her into signing. I just watched her, remembering how she had been the one to demand the document, so sure it would never be used against her. The judge ruled that due to the clause, any request for compensation was nullified. Furthermore, he ordered the return of all expensive gifts received during the marriage. Her family shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Jewelry, money, even trips they had accepted as part of the celebration now had to be returned. The shame was twofold: moral and financial. I didn't feel triumph. I felt justice. For weeks, I had slept beside a woman who treated me like an obstacle. Now, I watched her defeated by her own machinations, unable to claim a single thing. It was a clean end, with no room for doubt or manipulation. It was all there, written in legal ink, and signed by her own hand. She tried to speak to me directly, pleading with me not to be cruel, to leave her with something to rebuild her life. I didn't answer. It wasn't the time or the place for mercy. The judge ordered her to be silent, warning that her pleas had no standing. The dignity I had lost during those cold nights I was reclaiming in that instant, in front of everyone. The audience made no effort to hide their reactions. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others glared at her with contempt. She had no allies left, not even in her own family. The very same people who had celebrated our wedding now pointed to her as the architect of her own ruin. I simply listened to the judge's every word, like a man receiving a verdict he had long awaited. When the session was adjourned, her image was shattered. She was no longer the untouchable wife who had toyed with my patience, but the woman who had unwittingly signed her own condemnation. I walked out of the courthouse with a firm stride, fully aware that the worst for her was yet to come. The real sentencing would take place in the world outside, beyond those walls. The court's verdict was merely the beginning. Outside the courthouse, cameras swarmed her. Before she could shield her face, the flashes had already immortalized her broken expression. Within hours, the story was all over social media. The wife who married for money and lost everything because of a contract she herself had demanded. The family name she had sought to use for her social ascent became a synonym for ridicule. Her workplace was quick to react. Some of her colleagues had attended the hearings and did not hesitate to spread every detail. What began as rumors ended with an official email. Her image affects the company's reputation. Fired without severance. The woman who prided herself on always being in control was left without a salary, without a marriage, and without support. Her family was even crueler than the justice system. Her mother confronted her in public during a family lunch, screaming that she had dishonored their name. Her father, unable to bear the shame, stopped speaking to her. Her cousins and aunts turned their backs. The same relatives who had showered her with gifts and money for the wedding now demanded every last cent be returned. And with the judge's order being clear, she had no escape. Her friends were no comfort either. Those who once laughed at her private jokes now silently blocked her. No one wanted to be associated with her. Screenshots of her own messages circulated through chats and groups, proof of what she was capable of. In a matter of weeks, she lost what had taken her years to build, her social circle. Months later, I ran into her unexpectedly at a restaurant. She was thinner, and her makeup couldn't quite hide the dark circles under her eyes. She walked with a stoop, as if carrying a weight she could never set down. She approached my table with a broken smile. "I need to talk to you," she said. Her voice lacked the sharp edge she once used to belittle me. Now, it was pure pleading. She asked for another chance. She claimed she had changed, that she understood her mistake. She tried to justify her initial coldness as fear, as confusion. I let her speak without interruption. I needed to hear just how far she would go in her desperation. When she finished, I looked her in the eyes and answered with the same coldness she had shown me every single night. "You chose to manipulate and betray. Now live with what you've sown." Her face shattered in that instant. She was hoping for tears of compassion, a nostalgic gesture, anything to give her hope. She received none, only silence, and the paid bill I left on the table before walking away. Behind me, her figure remained motionless, reduced to a shadow of the arrogant woman who once thought she could play me for a fool. In time, her name became a cautionary tale. Don't pull a C was the phrase I'd hear in meetings and conversations, a direct reference to her story, to how she tried to get rich through marriage and ended up in ruin. Every mention was another nail in the coffin of her reputation. I, on the other hand, found my peace. It wasn't easy, but I learned that dignity is defended with actions, not with pleas. The cold nights she gave me transformed into the calm of knowing I had not allowed myself to be destroyed. She lost money, family, friends, and respect. I only lost time, and time can always be reclaimed. Today, I walk with my head held high, not because I defeated her, but because I refused to be her victim. She sought a secure future at the expense of my life. The only thing she secured was a present filled with loneliness and contempt. That was her true sentence, to live with the echo of what she destroyed with her own hands.